Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Grey's Anatomy Season 2, Episode 26, Deterioration of the Fight or Flight Response. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happened in the episode. So the episode begins where the last one left off. Last episode, we left with a cliffhanger of Izzy recruiting George and being about to cut the LVAD wire. In this episode, it picks up with her having done so and her and George having a hard time handling Denny. George at first tries to call a code to try to save him. Izzy prevents him, saying that he has to get worse enough that the test will show the results that they need to get the heart. This then leads to George calling in Meredith, and then Christina is sent by Burke and also ends up there later, and they end up basically running the tests that they need on their own while trying to figure things out and, of course, being in a panic the entire episode until eventually Bailey realizes that it's too quiet. All of her suck-up interns are not sucking up, and she realizes something has to be wrong. She enters the room, sees what is happening, is very angry, but then goes to Richard with a hypothetical situation to leave him with reasonable doubt, I guess. Not reasonable doubt, that's not what I'm thinking of. Reasonable deniability, maybe is what I'm thinking. Plausible deniability, that was it. That's what I was thinking. Plausible deniability, she presents him with the hypothetical situation to try to figure out whether or not she informs Eunice of the test results, which do show that Denny should be getting the heart. And Richard replies, of course, that number one priority is to the patient. If medically he requires the heart, then that information has to be given and he should get that heart, even if it was a doctor's unethical behavior that led to him being eligible for the heart. Patient comes first. And so Han is brought in because Burke is in surgery to do the transplant of Denny's heart, or Denny's new heart. And we learn that they stole it from a father of two who's been waiting years to get the heart and is a good person according to Han, which just makes what Izzy did even worse. And we end this patient's story on a cliffhanger of the heart being installed, but not yet beating. Second patient, of course, is Burke, who at the end of the last episode was shot in the shoulder. He comes in, they do the work on him, and it's discovered that there is an aneurysm in a bundle of nerves, and his arm is feeling numb. So Shepard, he struggles with the idea of whether he goes ahead with the surgery, but he doesn't want to be responsible for potentially ending Burke's career if he ends up paralyzed, for example. And so he struggles with that throughout the episode, but ultimately decides to go ahead with the surgery. However, during the surgery, they realize that there is no reflex response from the hand, so they decide that they need to wake him up. And so Christina is called back, and her job is to basically keep Burke calm when he comes awake so that they can have him try to move his fingers to find out if he's truly paralyzed or not. However, she balks and isn't able to be there and do that job, so Derek does it instead. And this patient's cliffhanger is basically with his hand there and waiting to see whether or not he can move his fingers. Third patient is Richard's niece, Camille, or rather, well, Adele's sister's child, so his niece by marriage, but still his niece, obviously. And then the niece manages to, basically, Adele was chaperoning her prom. She decided to trade in her V card, as they called it in the episode, and ended up losing consciousness, which is what led to her having to be brought into the hospital. Addison is called in, and at first they're trying to keep it a secret from Richard. However, Addison does find something of concern when she examines Camille. Richard then finds out and reveals that Camille had 3 years previously been diagnosed with ovarian cancer. They took one of her ovaries out, left the other to try to maintain some fertility, and basically gives that history to Addison. Addison then unfortunately has to break the news that the cancer has relapsed, and I guess it's advanced enough that the characters, Adele, Richard, etc., are all very sure that Camilla is going to die, unfortunately. Um, and so her friends, because it was prom, call all the other teenagers there to come as well, but then Richard kicks them out. Once he does that, we get into some more of the relationship drama, which is that Adele reveals that she had always been aware of his affair with Ellis, that even though other people had told her to leave, she decided to stay for him. But if he does not put his family first before these other patients, when it is their 17-year-old niece, she is going to leave him. And he then has to basically go to a side room where he later has a heart-to-heart with Derek to think about the options there. Other drama is that Denny asks Izzy to marry him. We already talked about Christina balking. George and Meredith actually end up, when Meredith says that George calling her for help with Izzy meant something to her and then apologizes, George finally clears the air and says that she's not the one who should be sorry, it should be him, because he knew that she didn't feel that way about him, but that he allowed things to escalate and happen that night where they had failed physical intimacy because he figured one night with her was better than never, and that it's not her fault she didn't know any better. He did and still let it happen. Therefore, he is the one who is sorry and he apologizes to her, though we don't get to see her response, at least not in this episode. And that's everything that did happen in this episode. We will now rank this episode, and as always, we'll be ranking on our mostly objective ranking list, followed by the personal ranking list. So starting on our mostly objective ranking list, we have our multi-episode supporting character introduction, worth 2 points, and this is Camille Travis, who is Adele's niece, and therefore Richard's niece as well, who came in on her prom night. Then we have the multi-episode supporting character development, and this is that Denny's wire was cut, but it was cut off screen between last episode and this one, and that he does get the heart, which Han comes in and performs the surgery for because Burke is in surgery. We then get our supporting relationship development, which is when Denny asks Izzy to marry him. And all of these things are worth 2 points each, bringing us up to 6 points. However, we have some negatives. First negative, of course, is the negative messaging or behavior, which is, well, first, just stealing a heart, especially when we find out that it was going to, a good person, a father who, would have been able to play with his kids, who had a life worth saving. I mean, not that Denny doesn't. I'm not saying that he doesn't, but I'm just saying finding out that it was a good person it was going to go to, and a father to boot with young children, 4 and 5, who would love to probably play with their father and be able to run around with their father and are not able to because of his heart. And now he doesn't have that chance, and he's been waiting years, and now he doesn't get the opportunity to have the heart. That just makes it hit a little harder that they did this terrible thing in stealing a heart. And additionally, of course, is the fact that when Bailey finds them, Denny decides that he's going to lie to Bailey to try to cover for Izzy. Of course, she doesn't buy it, but just the fact that he felt that it was appropriate to lie to her to try to cover for Izzy is not good. Sometimes people who do bad things need to be able to take accountability for that, and him trying to cover for her is not going to teach her the lessons that she's going to need to learn to prevent this type of thing from happening again, because it should never happen in the first place, let alone happen again. Then we have our -3, and this is for the main relationship regression and or breakup, we have Adele revealing all of the hurt that she suffered and kept silent about within their marriage to Richard, which is a very hard blow to him, but then also saying, like, this is your last straw. If you do not do right by Camille, I'm leaving you. I stayed through this, I stayed through this, I stayed through this, but I'm not staying through you not doing right by a 17-year-old who is dying that we both love. And so there is that threat of breaking up, -3 points. And then also Christina. There are a couple of times in this episode where Christina balks from, like, is cowardly about the relationship with Burke. So the first time when he finds out that he's going to need this surgery, that there's an aneurysm, when a couple of his fingers start to go numb, he calls her in and then he asks her, as his girlfriend, for advice on what he should do. And she basically just apologizes, says she can't give an answer, that she'll think about it, and then she runs away to an on-call room because she can't be there for him like he needs. And then, because they're dating, Richard and Derek, bring Christina into the operating room when they need to wake Burke up to be that support, to be a familiar face, to keep him calm. And as soon as he wakes up, like, she just looks away from him and stands there and does nothing, freezing, and again, not being there when he needs her, balking. And that is also worth -3, which leaves us with a -4 total for this episode. Of course, the lowest score that we can give it is a 1, so that makes this episode objectively a 1 out of 10 episode. And with it being a 1 out of 10 episode, as I have mentioned before, when more than one episode on the list has the same score, they're just ranked in episode order. And so that makes our list so far for the mostly objective ranking. In first, Make Me Lose Control, Into You Like a Train, Begin the Begin, Tell Me Sweet Little Lies, Break On Through, As We Know It, What Have I Done to Deserve This, The Name of the Game, Deny, 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 Thanks for the Memories, It's the End of the World, 17 Seconds, Enough is Enough, Something to Talk About, Let It Be, Much Too Much, Yesterday, Superstition, Bring the Pain, Blues for Sister Someone, Band-Aid covers the Band-Aid, the bullet hole, oh my god. I'm gonna say that one again. Band-Aid covers the bullet hole, Damage Case, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, Owner of a Lonely Heart, Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer, and then this episode is currently in 26th place, Deterioration of the Fight or Flight Response. Bringing us to my personal ranking. Now, I liked this episode. It wasn't my favorite of the season, but I do really enjoy it. I felt like the tension was really good throughout the episode. I liked how all of the patients are connected to the doctors in some way. So it's not just like random single episode people. These are people that we've come to know or will care about, or are connected to people we've come to know and care about, in the case of Camille. So I do like that it is, what am I trying to say? Like, how do I want to word it? I do like that connection, that there are people that we actually already know and can care about and have a connection to. Because one thing, like, if you've watched any of my videos, you probably know that I am the type of person, I don't get attached to random people. I don't feel like immediate attachment to strangers. My empathy just doesn't stretch that far. My empathy really is for people I know and know well, like clannish. So in this case, because it is people either we already know, like Burke and Denny, and they're connected to people we already know. Obviously, Burke's connected to everyone in the hospital, Denny to Izzy, and then Camille comes in and she's connected to Richard and Adele, we've also met before, and Richard, of course, is in most episodes. It does lend that empathetic connection so that I care more than usual about these patients. Obviously, there's the impacts to Burke's career, which has high stakes. Denny's almost dying, high stakes. The fact that we left on the cliffhanger of Denny's heart not beating yet and Burke not able to move his fingers yet. I loved all of that. I even liked the negatives in like that we're adding in a little bit of the relationship drama. I like that Adele confirms for like the first time to Richard that she knew about him and Ellis all this time. He thought it was a secret affair. Turns out it never was. I like that he is fighting to keep his sobriety because as he's talking to Derek, he mentions how the drink he's drinking, he wishes that it was bourbon, but he hasn't reached for the bourbon, which is good because we did learn in a previous episode that he was previously an alcoholic and did have issues with that. Christina, as much as I think like that she should have been able to be there for her partner in his time of need, I also think that it is within Christina's character description to balk at that sort of situation. Like she's been balking at every sort of milestone in their relationship. She balked to consider them dating. She balked to tell him that she was pregnant. She balked to move in with him. Now she's balking to be there for him emotionally when he needs her. Basically, like at every opportunity to move the relationship into a more serious zone, she steps back first in a cowardly way before eventually coming to and coming around and being there. So I feel like this is within her character. So I don't dock points for it personally, though I do wish she could have been more supportive to him because they are at this point in a serious relationship. They're living together. They have been together for some time in the series. And I feel like it's, in sickness and in health. And the sickness part is when you really and truly need your partner to be there for you. And her not being there, I feel would be a pretty hard emotional blow. And then again, I feel like the heart stealing hits more because it was taken from a good person. But then that's still personally, I would consider emotionally more positive because it's coming from a nice person and it does hit harder that that's what you would want it to do plot wise. And then Meredith and George, they're clearing the air, though honestly, I'm over that by now. Either way, there was not really. I liked the episode as a whole. I also liked, like how everyone was coming in with the pretty dresses. I liked the wardrobe from the prom. Um, Ultimately, I felt like I said, it was one of the stronger episodes of the series or season, series so far of this particular season, and that is why I decided to give it a 10 out of 10. And our personal ranking list now is as we know it in first place. It's the end of the world. Damage case. This episode I put in fourth. Deterioration of the fight or flight response. Make me lose control. Raindrops keep falling on my head. Something to talk about. 17 seconds. Into you like a train. Break on through. Deny, deny, deny. Let it be. Tell me sweet little lies. The name of the game. Begin the begin. Blues for sister someone. Then we have Thanks for the Memories, Much Too Much, Yesterday, Superstition, Enough is Enough, Bring the Pain, Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer, What Have I Done to Deserve This, Owner of a Lonely Heart, and in last place is Band-Aid Covers the Bullet Hole. Bringing us now to the final segment, which is our series ranking so far. And on our mostly objective ranking, Season 1 ended at 77.78%. Season 2 so far has a score of 197 out of a possible 270. On the personal ranking side, Season 1 ended with 66.67%, and Season 2 so far has a score of 186 out of 270. So with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Grey's Anatomy Season 2, Episode 26, Deterioration of the Fight or Flight Response. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.